All right, we're in Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 to 20. All right, it says, beware of false prophets. Got a lot of those. Seems like we have one every year. Who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. I guess we gotta look up fruit. Fruit of the Spirit. That would be something to look up. Go ahead, Jeremy, you got a question?
What chapter and verse?
Matthew chapter 7,
Thank you.
15. Little short passage, but we could go cross references. I can't look up too much right now. Let me just finish reading this. Only 2 more verses. So a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. From one angle, you could look at this and somebody could say, oh, you see, you got to be perfect. And they will go to 1 John and look at the scriptures that talks about he who is, in the light does not sin at all. And people will take these passages and say that if you're born again, you won't sin at all. And if you sin, it's because you are a child of Satan. That's what they would say. But obviously here it says that they come to you in sheep's clothing. And sheep represent the people of Yahuwah. Yahusha is the shepherd. Yahuwah is the shepherd, right? The book of Psalms says, Yahuwah is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. Yahusha, the Messiah, is our shepherd. And so his sheep would be his disciples, his children, his people. So if somebody comes to you in a clothing, they're going to look like children. So by default, they're going to be able to do certain things that believers do. So there is some resemblance. So it's going to look like some fruit is there. So this passage almost makes it look like there has to be no good fruit at all in order for them to be a false prophet. Okay? That's not realistic. To me, I look for the bad fruit. How consistent is the bad fruit? Is it very consistent? This lighting is, I hate this lighting right now. It's so disgusting. I feel like I'm in the shadows. It is what it is. No. Does anybody have anything they want to say so far? Go ahead, Milo.
2 things. So actually go to something else. So Deuteronomy 13, 1 to 5. So Deuteronomy 13, 1 to 5. Because it's talking about false prophets, right? And being aware of them. And because when I think about a prophet, I think it's someone that's going to give a sign.
Yep.
Right. So that's
something
my
that's
first
going to happen
thing.
in the future.
Yeah.
Or this is what this means, and this is a checkpoint. This is what Yahweh is doing now.
That's my first thing. And the first thing I would think of is, okay, I know in order to test a prophet, if they say something and it does not come to pass, then they weren't sent of Yahuwah.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting because in Deuteronomy 13, 1 to 5, it says, if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you, and he gives you a sign or wonder, and the sign or the wonder comes to pass. So this sign or what, he said something and it actually came to pass. So now it's like, oh, you're legit. Like you got the stamp of approval right now, right? But Yahuwah keeps going. He says, of which he spoke to you, saying, let's go after other gods, which you have not known, and let's serve them. This will be part of that fruit. Now you can see they look like the sheep. Okay, their sign actually came forth.
Their prophecy came forth.
But what's your doctrine? Because that's one of the fruits to me. Not just the fruit of the spirit, but what are you teaching?
Now that's good, because people say, oh, the fruit of the spirit. So they go to the New Testament passage on what the fruit of the spirit is: gentleness, kindness, meekness. And most of the time, false prophets actually have all those things. They're usually soft-spoken. They're usually very nice people. They usually seem to be very loving and patient and kind. That doctrine, though.
But and that's what,
Doctrine.
because what does the enemy come? He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So if you're coming as a sheep, right, you're looking soft and docile. But the doctrine that you hold within you is as a ravening wolf that can destroy people. That's something to be fearful. Not fearful, but in the sense of wary of, don't mess with that person. So again, so Deuteronomy 13:1. So if he comes and he says, let's serve another one. Verse 3 says, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or to that dreamer of dreams. For Yahuwah your Elohim is testing you, which is very interesting, to know whether you love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. Now, I find it interesting because it's like, how would I put this in an analogy? It's almost like a daddy saying, never go with a stranger, ever. Don't ever talk to strangers. If they say come, don't go. And I don't know if you've ever seen those videos where parents actually set up false strangers to go to their children at parks. So there's like a social experiment that's out there. So they hire someone.
You got a dog. You want to pet it?
Exactly. And the stranger to the child says, I have a dog, or I have cake, or whatever it is that entices these little ones. And the parents think, my child will never go. I've taught them this. My babies know from the beginning, do not go with strangers. I've embedded in this. And most of the time the children go. And so now it's almost, they put their children to the test.
The guy goes up to the mom, like, you think your kid will go for, if I go up to your child with this puppy in the playground, you think your kid will come with me to my car?
No.
Nah, my kid, I've always taught my kids not to talk to strangers. Okay, let me try.
Can I test them?
They go, hey, I got other dogs in the car. Want to come with me? Yeah.
And so in
just
that
sense, easy.
I think about it, where you're testing to see where is
Armani
your heart.
Armani's just about to pull out a shotgun.
That's my baby.
He's like, what?
So in that sense, I see it, because at the end of the day, the people that turn to these other gods, their hearts were not with Yahuwah anyway, right?
Right.
So he's really, to me, when Yahuwah shows us these things, he already knows where we lie. I think he does it for us to say, you need to know where your heart is, because it's very deceptive. The heart can be very deceptive. So nevertheless, verse 4 of Deuteronomy 13, it says, you shall walk after Yahuwah your Elohim. Fear him, keep his commandments, obey his voice. You shall serve him and cling to him. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death. That's how serious it is. Because he has spoken rebellion against Yahuwah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, so on and so forth. So I just kind of want to bring up that contrast with Matthew in regards to prophets that can, or dreamers that can produce signs, but we have to know them by, are they doing the will of the Father? What are they speaking? What's their doctrine? And can I just go over one more verse? In Yehukanan or John, Yehukanan 10, I'm not going to read it all, but verses 1 to 14, Messiah talks about how we can know those that are not of him. They're basically strangers or thieves that come into the sheepfold, but they do not come through the door. He is the door. So they're not coming through him. They're climbing over gates. They're trying to do anything they can to get to the sheep to still kill and destroy them. But Yahusha says in verse 7, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep, and all that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep do not hear them. I'm the door. By me, if any man enter, he shall be saved and shall go out and find pasture, so on and so forth. And he talks about how he's a good shepherd. So I think that's why we have to be solid in the word, because that's how we're able to hear people's motives. And a lot of it comes through discernment. We learn that as well. Sometimes someone talks a good game and you just feel something in your spirit is off. Just like, I can't pinpoint it. And that's where discernment comes in, which I think is something we need to pray for, especially when it comes to these false prophets and people in sheep's clothing that are wolves.
Matthew chapter 12 is a cross-reference.
Oh, you can use something.
Thank you. Matthew chapter 12, verse 33 to about 37. It's a good cross-reference. It says, either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else the tree bad and its fruit bad. For a tree is known by its fruit. Brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? Just like Nilo said, the prophecies might come to pass, but what else are they speaking? So it's what comes out of your mouth. So here's one fruit, is by the doctrine that comes from your mouth. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say to you that for every idle word men speak, they will give account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. It has a lot to do with what you teach and what you preach.
I think you had a question. I'm sorry.
Jeremy, did you have a question? Nilo said you had a question before.
I'm
No?
sorry.
All right. Anybody else have any cross references on fruit, Dakota? Question?
I do. Do you think that 2 Corinthians 11, 14, and 15 would apply to this?
2 Corinthians, what?
11, 14, and 15.
2 Corinthians 11. 2 Corinthians 11. 11, 13, and 14. So,
No, 14 and 15.
Oh, 14, 15. And no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works. Perfect. Yes. Good cross reference. So if Satan could do it, and his ministers could do it, you know, it says, verse 12, if you go back a little bit, it says, but what I do, I will also continue to do, that I may cut off the opportunity from those who desire an opportunity to be regarded just as we are in the things of which they boast. So there's some people that crave leadership. There's people that crave it so much that they have to compromise to try to get there. And these are the folk you want to be careful for. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Messiah. And then it goes on. No wonder, for Satan is able to pretend to be something, so also his ministers will be also. Yeah, right before it says, deceitful workers transforming themselves into apostles. I don't think it's transforming like they're, you know what I'm saying, doing anything supernatural. But I think it has to do with pretending, you know, putting on clothing, right? Like sheep's clothing, but being ravenous wolves.
Has to play the part. It's interesting because they literally mimic their father, Hasatan.
Yeah.
Think about it. Hasatan can change his looks and the way he does it and the way he's very cunning. So can his children.
Yep.
And that's why, I won't get into it, but I think we're going to get, well, we're actually going to get into the next one. I think the iron that calls upon me. Is that one? Yeah. So I'll be back.
Anybody else got any more on fruit? I think
Galatians.
there's more. Yeah, there's more to talk about there.
I try to look it up.
Go ahead. Luke chapter 6, verse 43 to 45.
For no good tree produces bad fruit, nor does a bad tree produce good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. Figs aren't picked from thorn bushes, nor grapes from a briar patch. The good person produces good things from the store of good in his heart, while the evil person produces evil things from the store of evil in his heart. For his mouth speaks what overflows from his heart.
Yeah, and again, don't get it twisted. Again, a lot of these false prophets, false teachers do a lot of good. You got religions, you got denominations, assemblies that feed the poor. I remember I had a cousin that got caught up in a very, very wicked religion that I had never heard of until he was in it. They believed that a Korean guy who died in 1985 was Messiah reincarnated. And he was a Korean man. And they called him Ansang. His name is Ansang Han. And the name of the church is the World Mission Society Church of God or something like that. World Mission Society Church of God. And they believe that there is a mother God. And that the name of the Holy Spirit that's on the earth right now is Ansang Han. And so I went into this church, and they run 24/7, by the way. They recruit 24/7. They have classes going. You can bring people at any time of the day, any time of the night, and enroll them into the first class. And there's a bunch of classes they go through, and they have to go in a particular order. The first class was on the Sabbath and how the churches don't teach on the Sabbath. I thought it was excellent. I was like, wow, because I was actually coming into this truth. I was already out of Christianity and kind of like on my own, didn't really have a fellowship or anything. But the presentation, I was like, wow. I was like, I've actually come to the realization of all this information. I thought it was really well. I was like, can I take the class on the Mother God? I want to skip a couple classes and take the class on the Mother God. I want to hear what you guys teach. And they were like, no, you got to go in order. I was like, oh, I got to go in order. Let's see. Can you share with me? Like, what if I don't go to the class? Can you just share with me what you guys believe about that from the scriptures? And they didn't want to tell me. They're like, no, you got to go through the class. I was like, And I told my cousin, all right, let's go. We're leaving. This is a cult here. We're going home. They're brainwashing you. They're secretive and very strategic. Don't got a good feeling about this. And they basically, my cousin wanted to stay. And they kicked me out, and I was rebuking them from outside, and they called the police on me. And there's about 3 cops that showed up, and it was like 12 o'clock midnight. And I called his mom. I said, you better get your son. He went into a real bad religion. I've never heard of this in my life. And so my cousin was upset at me, but I did some research on them, and I found out that, I forgot what year this was, but they had received an award from Barack Obama for their charitable deeds. And this religion is rich. Rich. And I'm sure y'all probably didn't even hear of the World Mission Society Church of God. These people, if you look them up, look at their headquarters, they look like Trump. They look better than Trump Towers. Their headquarters, their buildings are immaculately made. The architecture is beautiful. And what they do is they send people to Florida for huge conferences or whatever. They send them around the world, and they brainwash them, and they teach them they're very strategic in how to get people to believe in their faith. So basically, I say all that to say that you're going to have good stuff coming out of false prophets. They would be idiots to do everything wrong and expose themselves. Nobody's going to try to do that. Nobody's going to try to make bold-faced lies and abusing people in front of everybody. And no, they're going to be the nicest people. They're going to do a lot of good deeds. They're going to use kindness and meekness and gentleness and self-control. And yeah, they go for weak people. They go for people who are soft and weak. And that's what we found. A lot of people that were given into this faith were people that you couldn't talk with them alone. You only could talk with them with a leader nearby. They weren't people that were able to defend their own faith. You have that in Christianity. You have that anywhere. You have people who can't stand up for their own faith. They need the help of somebody else to speak for them. So if you're a random person on the street and you're like, hey, can we talk about the Bible? They're like, nope, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk about the Bible. I'll get my pastor though. That's not good. It's important for all of us to be able to, stand up for ourselves, to be sober-minded, to read and study the scriptures, and to contend for the faith that we believe. It doesn't say contend for the faith that your shepherd believes or contend for the faith that your elder believes. It says contend for the faith that is in you. So anyway, a little bit about fruit. Then obviously, there is the fruit of the Spirit. Okay, well known. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. As long as you are practicing these things without compromising doctrine and without compromising morality, it's good. Love is good. Joy is good. Peace is good. Patience is good. Kindness is good. Goodness is good. Faithfulness is God, obviously good. Gentleness is good, and self-control is good, as long as you're not compromising doctrinal truth. Because I don't hear in here, it doesn't say one of the fruits of the Spirit is sound doctrine, even though I know that it is, because we just read it. Milo just read in Deuteronomy, how if a prophet, his prophecy comes to pass, but he tells you to follow other gods, don't follow him. And we read in another passage in the New Testament that by the fruit of your lips comes from the treasures of your heart. So doctrine is definitely a fruit that I think is overlooked when studying the topic of the fruit of the Spirit. Nobody really likes to talk about sound doctrine. So that's really important.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm going to see how I can pose that, I guess, as a question. Now, there are those of us in the walk that are of the faith, right? But let's say we have part of a rotten fruit, like patience, right? Some of us lack patience, but we may have the other parts of the Spirit. Or some of us lack self-control, things that we have to grow in. How do you know the difference between someone who has that aspect in their life that is bad, that they need help in, versus that is their character and they're not of Yahuwah? Case
by case basis. I can't share that all right now in this video. I can't explain that. Paul talks about kicking people out of the congregation and not even eating with them. Yahusha was flipping tables and made a whip by his own hand. Look at my Hurtful Righteous Words series, Hurtful Righteous Words playlist. It's a case by case basis. You have to determine if the level of anger is justified. Why are they getting angry? What are they getting angry about? Is it justified? Is it not justified? It's a case by case basis. It's not something that I can answer. All right. We got no more cross references. We'll end right there. That was Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 to 20. You know them by their fruit.